Recording.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, we are.
Someone else's sound is
Hale, can you, I think your sound is.
Sorry.
Like the lowest or the icon, I think it'll be okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Chair, we're good to go.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sterling Higa, Chairperson of the Authority, and I'd now like to call to order the November 6th, 2024 at-large Authority meeting of the Hawaii Community Development Authority. The time is now 9:02 a.m.
Thank you, Chair. In accordance with section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes, the Hawaii Community Development Authority is holding today's at-large meeting virtually on Zoom. The Zoom link details were included on the meeting agenda. Therefore, members of the public are welcome to join us on Zoom and also at our physical meeting site at the American Brewery Building, 547 Queen Street, second floor boardroom, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96813. The HCDA communications staff is holding this meeting. Once this meeting begins, everyone will be muted for clearer audio. Board members, if you have any comments or questions, please unmute yourselves to speak. It is important that all individuals clearly state their name, pseudonym, or other identifier name each time prior to speaking. If you wish to provide oral testimony and you're attending virtually, please indicate so by clicking the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen. If you are attending in person, you will be called to the front of the room in the order that you signed up. All testimony will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Your testimony must be related to an item on the agenda. Before you begin your testimony, we ask that you identify yourself, spell your name for the record. When 1 minute is remaining, 1 minute remains will be called out, and when 30 seconds remain will be called out. Time has elapsed, time will be called out, after which you will have 30 seconds to conclude your testimony, and then your audio will be turned off. If you're attending in person, the presiding officer will call the next testifier. Keep in mind that this is an opportunity to share your thoughts with us. If you ask a question during your testimony, neither the board nor the staff is required to provide an answer. The authorities mentioned for the remote meeting is lost. The meeting will be recessed until the connection is restored. If the connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes, the meeting will be terminated and the authority will continue the meeting at another notice date. Thank you. Eric.
HCDA board members, please remain visible and audible during the meeting. Also, please acknowledge you are present by either saying here or present. Let the record reflect that the following members are present. Vice Chair Ishii.
Here.
Member Miranda Johnson.
Excuse the chair.
Member Anderson.
Here.
Member Evans.
Here.
Member Streitz.
Streitz is excused.
Thank you. Member Yamashita.
Excused.
Member Suji.
Present.
Member China.
Present.
Member Sakota.
Present.
Member Lidstone.
Ew.
Member Ray.
Here.
Member Leong.
Here.
Member Lipe. Member Kabibi.
Present.
And Member Yamasaki.
Here.
Carrie, you have quorum.
Thank you. For today's board meeting, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments after an agenda item has been presented. Individuals from the public who have requested to provide verbal public testimony on a specific agenda item are on standby and will be permitted to provide their testimony respectively. We'll move now to agenda item number 2, approval of the regular meeting minutes of October 2nd, 2024. Board members, are there any comments or corrections to these minutes? If there are no comments or questions, the minutes are approved as presented. Moving now to agenda item number 3, decision-making on the election of a secretary for the remaining term of fiscal year 2024 to 2025. We thank member Apo, but Peter Apo, cultural specialist, had to resign from the HCDA board, thereby creating a vacancy. We will have to conduct an election for the office of HCDA board secretary for the remainder of Apo's term of fiscal year 2024-2025. But before we take nominations, we will hear public testimony. Do we have anyone signed up in person or online?
No, Chair. No testimony.
Okay. No inquiries to provide verbal testimony, no written testimonies received. So if anyone on this Zoom meeting or in person at the meeting site would like to provide testimony on this item, please notify the HCDA communication staff by raising your hand. And now we'll open for nominations for the office of secretary. Board members, an officer may hold 2 offices, and you may nominate yourself if you wish to volunteer to serve as an officer. Do we have any nominations to serve as secretary?
Chair, may I just jump in? So one thought would be to have the vice chair serve as secretary, kind of holding 2 positions, offices. But it occurred to me that maybe member Lidstone might be willing to serve as well. Member Lidstone?
Happy to serve, Craig.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Chair.
Member Lidstone has been nominated. Are there any other nominations?
No.
Okay. Just for record keeping, we'll say that I, the chair, nominated member Lidstone. And now we'll go for a roll call vote. So the nominee is Mikiala Lidstone. May I ask Craig to conduct a roll call vote on the nominee?
Thank you, Chair. On the nominee, member Lidstone for secretary, Chair,
Aye.
Vice Chair. Yes. Member Anderson,
Yes.
member Mary Alice Evans,
Yes.
member Tsuji,
Yes.
member Sakota,
Yes.
member China. Member China,
Yes.
thank you. Member Ray,
Yes.
member Lidstone, you can vote for yourself.
I,
Okay, good. Member Leon,
Yes.
member Light is excused. Member Yamasaki,
Yes.
member Kabibi.
Yes.
The nomination is official. Congratulations to Mikiala Lidstone, our new secretary. Thank you for serving.
mahalo nui kako.
Thank you, member Lidstone. We'll move now to agenda item number 4 for information and discussion. This is an informational and educational presentation entitled Honolulu Unplugged, Kaka'aka Makai by Hale Takazawa AIA regarding his ideas about decentralized infrastructure. Mr. Craig Nakamoto, Executive Director, will now introduce the presenter.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for introducing me to Hale. Hale is an architect, AIA architect, researcher, and owner of the firm Hale. The firm focuses on creating living buildings and communities that are socially just, culturally rich, and ecologically regenerative. Currently, the firm is working on providing technical assistance to various nonprofit community partners who are applying for EPA, community change, and climate justice grants. Notable projects Hale has worked on include the Kaka VA outpatient clinic in Kapolei, the Dole Plantation store, and master plan the Maui Ocean Center, Amundsen Scott South Pole Station in Antarctica and the Coalina Marina. The extent of his biography is included in your board packet, so I'd like to introduce and bring up Hale Takazawa to provide his presentation. Thank you, Hale.
All right, thanks. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me to come and talk to you. So, yeah, I think, let's see, how much time I have? Just about.
So here, let's go with your presentation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna share screen. Start. So today's presentation is really about mindsets. So I know that we're going through a lot of mindset adjustments this morning, depending on how you feel politically, but I'll pile on a few more. So here, so some of the mindsets we're gonna challenge today are progress being greater than ecosystems, and that includes environmental, cultural, commercial systems. The green lawn being equal to the American dream, and the picture you see in front of you is Kaka'ako Park, as you know, it's full of really great green lawns. And that sewage water and utilities are the response is a centralized system. That's the responsibility of the municipal organization that we have in place. So we're going to challenge all of those, and hopefully you'll have our growth mindset. As you know, Carol Dweck always compares growth mindset and fixed mindsets. So, okay, let's start with our rail system, since you will be since we have to think about the larger picture, and this is just our rail system with the different stops, and we all know that within a half-mile radius of these stops, we're going to be introducing density as part of our land plan. I've superimposed this with sea level rise, so the highlighted area is our 3.2 sea level rise, and the little fires and H's are hospitals, fire departments. The little manhole covers are sewer, critical sewer pump stations, and other infrastructure stations. So since this committee gets to think about infrastructure a lot, I figure we can start there and you can kind of identify where we have hazard risks. So what you don't have in your packet about me is that I am the founder and chair of the AIA's Honolulu's Design for Risk and Resiliency Committee. So we just think about risk to our state, and it started in 2019. Joe Ferraro calls me up and says, you know, he became the president at that time, and he says, can you start this committee? So I said, okay, I'll start it, but you have to let people who are non-architects into this committee. So we started it up, grew to about 100 members, and now it's about 80 something after COVID, and we're still restructuring. But we try to identify and discuss. It started with sea level rise. At 2019, it was a very hot topic among the architecture community. So so I got to wrap my head around the problem of what sea level rise does to our infrastructure. So you may or may not have thought about this a lot, so I'll try to describe it quickly, what is probably going to happen to us. So this is, you can see, this is Honolulu, this is this is Kewalo Basin right here, and this is Kaka'ako Makai. Anything that's in blue is looking at sea level rise at that 3.2 level inundation. And when you think about sea level rise, you have to think about what the sea level rise is at. And then you add groundwater on top of that, which Chip Fletcher is now doing research on to understand that because groundwater has less salinity, it actually floats on top of the salt water, right? So it creates a higher level than that. And then we have storm situations where we have storm surge or flooding or other things that are actually fresh water coming down from the mountains. So we're going to talk about a little bit more on that, how it affects our infrastructure. But this is the base inundation, and then it just goes up from here another 3 feet or whatever hazard the hazard brings us. So that's just basically the minimal level. Okay, here's a shot of, this was the point where what happens to our wastewater systems, and I'm very focused on wastewater mainly because it's kind of like our Achilles heel, and you know that it already is for development, just because how, you know, the lack of infrastructure that we have. But the things that we don't like to talk about is engineers, is that water, especially when we have groundwater flooding, is that it actually saturates the ground and leaks into the system itself. So when that system gets overloaded with water, so you have raw sewage with stormwater seeping in, and you have these massive amounts of water heading down toward our centralized sewage plants and pump stations, and they just get overwhelmed. It causes them to have to shut it off, and then we have to divert the water either straight out into the ocean or into Alawai or wherever situations that we have. So that's basically how we fertilize groundwater to the point where we have to close our beaches and so forth. It's because of this, basically a leaky sewer system. This is actually a fictional town in the Midwest somewhere, because a lot of those towns like Cleveland or a lot of these towns have systems that are called, they're actually doubled systems. So they're designed to catch stormwater and sewage at the same time, and then they push through our system, which is exactly very similar to what happens to us when we have a storm event or rain events, right? We have stormwater actually entering our sewage system. It overflows and then it goes into a body of water. So the way that we think about engineering right now is that we try to take water from, we try to catch water as quickly as we possibly can on our streets, and then stick it into a channel or a pipe. And in the name of efficiency, we shoot it out to the ocean or to a main body of water as quickly as we can. And we're starting to learn now, right, which is like the Hawaiians knew this from the beginning. Beavers knew it before that, but the idea of actually slowing water down and spreading it out over the land and letting it saturate the ground, recharge our aquifers, is a concept called one water, which, you know, in our modern society we call it one water, but it's been around for a very long time, and we've decided to actually cut off all of those systems by channeling our water. So we've basically taken civil engineering and we've destroyed ourselves in a sense, and now we're trying to rethink, like, maybe we have to turn this upside down and think about how do we actually hold water back, store it on our sites as much as we can before we push it out into the ocean. So that concept is very familiar with civil engineers, and it should, I think most of you have already heard that, but it's actually affects our sewer systems as well. Okay, so this is a civil engineering report. I'm sure you get to follow this every year. They tell us that our grading system is that our infrastructure is very bad. And due to lack of funding, we are not able to. It's difficult to effectively maintain this system that we've created for ourselves. And this was back in 2019. So at that time, they did not publish the cost of what it would actually take to fix all of this because they stopped publishing it. In about 2010, I think it was the last time we saw what we thought the cost would be to fix something like this, and it was about I think they said 14 million or something. And well, you can check my notes. I think it might be in the packet. And if you actually added, or it would be 14. Did I say million instead of billion? Should be billion. It should be about 5 to 10 times that amount if we actually figured out how to mitigate the risk of our infrastructure system as we have it today. So the thing I wanted to add was, and we all do this, is we invest in municipal bonds. And the cool thing about municipal bonds is that they're tax-free, right? You don't get federal, you don't pay federal or state tax on muni bonds. And we're constantly funding our wastewater system because we don't actually know any other way to fix it. So it's this, and we love to invest in it because we know it's always there and it's tax-free. So we always raise the money. Problem is that when a problem like this, say sea level rise hits us, and we're forced to pay something like 5 or 10 times the cost of rail, it may actually run our whole system into the ground. So, and I know the folks here, you guys are good at running good at running numbers. So it might be something that I'd like to study a little bit further, especially with DBED, to look at developing an economic model of what it actually costs when we have this kind of destruction, based on an idea of whatever sea level rise assumption you want to create. So there's no actual incentive when you have constant tax-free funding and investors who want to do this, because I personally buy muni bonds as well, right, for sewer systems. That there's no incentive to change the direction that we're going. So it's actually really profitable to do this. So, but when you see what's coming up ahead for the next generation and our inability to keep up with it, I think we have to look at something that's further outside of the box than whatever we've been assuming right now. So I'm gonna shift gears. This is a basic off-grid house. This is what we think of as off-grid, right? Water collection, PV, local sewage treatment by dumping it into a cesspool that is now illegal, and whatever emergency measures that you can put together. So that is a good idea. It's just a matter of upping the sophistication. And I think it's getting there. Like from 10 years ago till now, it's a big difference. And 10 years from now will be an even bigger difference. So we understand that this can work in rural situations, but I want you to make the leap to see if we can actually put it into larger buildings. So this is Nelha example. We have what some of you may know of, what we call living buildings, but living buildings are buildings that are beyond LEED Platinum. You know, it's not about just sustaining, it's about actual self-sufficiency of a building and regenerating the environment that it's in, instead of just sustaining whatever destruction we've created already. So these are just some examples, but really good examples are Bullitt Center in Washington State, Candida Center over in Georgia Tech. Those are excellent buildings that in different climate zones that demonstrate we can actually build self-sufficient buildings. So I refer to them as living buildings. If any of you have heard of the Living Building Challenge, then that's basically the challenge where we say, okay, let's take a building or even an existing building like this one and say, can we make it fully independent? So the keystone premise, I usually use the word keystone for things that have massive impact in the way that, because it affects so many other things. So if we have a keystone premise that a decentralized infrastructure might be beneficial to our state, then we can actually start to think about what I call unplugging Honolulu. So you can imagine every building at some point, maybe not in our lifetimes, but every building being a living building where it has its own water capabilities, its own waste treatment capability, its own power generation, food security, its own fire safety. And which is actually a big one when you think about the way we design buildings is basically based on the ability for a fire truck to come and rescue people or get people out of a building. So the building code is based on fire safety primarily. And it also allows wetland and biome recreation. And then with that, a whole slew of workforce development from monitoring all of these new systems to new training and technologies that we don't even know about yet. So, and the reason why we'll go a little bit further from this idealized idea, and then we'll use our imagination to try and figure out how does this actually apply to a place like Kakaako. So this is an AI generated image where I said, show me an urban environment that has the integration of all of these features that I just described in the previous slide, and where it features sharing power, water, sewage treatment, energy security, water security, self-sufficiency, and creating hyper-local community-based infrastructure that can actually support an urban environment. So, and I have at the very bottom, self-sufficiency is equal to hazard mitigation, because in having communication and conversations with HAIMA about hazard mitigation and what that actually means, because when you can, if you think about it from a state perspective, if we get hit by an event, right, whatever hazard event that is, and it knocks out the power, our mindsets normally say, oh yeah, everyone's power is going to be out. But when you're in a situation like this, not everyone's power is going to be out. So it's going to be certain places where people's power goes out. Everyone else will still be going. So you have like the ability to be resilient at a level where businesses can continue. Yeah, people can keep working, their kids can still go to school. It makes people and communities far more self-sufficient than when you have a centralized infrastructure. The next slide is about how we actually can build communities like this. And it starts, of course, with relationships. If you're familiar with, I guess it's Hawaii culture, but specifically with Hawaiian culture, relationships are the first and last. It's like the alpha and omega of our operations. So those are key, and this body, of course, knows that. Once relationships are built or repaired, because in the smaller communities, we have problems with just repairing the relationships within a community to get people together. We can look at things like host culture technology. And then the next, if you start from the left, it's relationships, host culture, technology, native plants and ecosystem restoration. So these technologies are what are being taught in Hawaiian immersion schools. And in smaller communities, we're seeing right now that by teaching about native, let's say a voyaging canoe is a good example, right? Because the native plants that you need to actually be able to build a canoe is off the charts difficult. And based on that difficulty, you can actually spur training and skill sets for things like total cottage industry development. So it starts with native technology. It goes to native plants, and native plants also have huge ramifications on bringing back ecosystems. Douglas Tallamy's book on he writes a lot about how native plants can rejuvenate systems. Let me go back, sorry. And then, and that can actually culminate in resilience hubs. So you build a resilience hub or within a community, and it can be like from a school or a church or any kind of community center that has blue sky and gray sky uses. So blue sky is uses that are when things are great. Gray sky would be when things actually don't go great. And you have to be completely resilient, and it could start at these resilience hubs. So this is where you can teach all of the things like relationship building, technology, plant systems, and it leads to certain outcomes that are really great for building an entire community. So we're looking at a restored biome. So these are all the outcomes based on spiritual, body, and mind types of benefits. And it leads to ultimately self-sufficiency, hazard resiliency, meaning and purpose, which for those of you in that community of why our suicide rates are up and why a lot of the smaller communities are completely demoralized, it's mainly because of it, resulting from meaning and purpose. Like they don't understand what their role in society is anymore, because we try to make life extraordinarily convenient for them, and that we tell them that they should actually just follow our system to find meaning and purpose through whatever means. It's usually through education and making a good living by making money, but it doesn't actually mean that you can survive in an environment where climate actually changes and affects us to the point that we have. Okay, last slide is just an image. I started with an image of Kakako. This is a quick illustration of a place where the wetlands have been reintroduced to cut and fill development, where we have buildings that actually have native plants that capture energy, have wind technology, solar technology. We use water itself for fire sprinklers instead of protecting our buildings with potable water like we do now. Which is, I mean, you can ask for any law. Yeah, we're trying to change that. It just takes time, but it's a lot easier to do when we have decentralized systems to help us do that. So it's actually creating buildings that would support the land and allowing for infrastructure that would allow the creation of these types of buildings. So in terms of policy, as you know, as planners know, we have, each municipality has a policy that forces us to connect to the city municipal system. And it seems like really logical and economical. So, but the challenge is that we have to think about a mindset that says maybe it's actually not economical and highest and best use. It might actually be quite destructive, and that we might want to include alternatives to development that challenge these keystone underlying assumptions about our infrastructure. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have time for questions. I think, I don't know if I went over time, sorry.
No problem. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Hale. No testimony, right?
No questions, don't worry.
Okay,
No
so
testimony.
questions or comments from board members? Member Evans?
Thank you, Hale. So we have lots of these decentralized systems in places like Puna and our rural areas. For one water in a urban area, I'm still a little confused about what that might look like. We use retention basins now to recharge our aquifers. Usually, we used to use golf courses for retention basins. But you know, do you see Kaka'ako being, Venice with canals, or how do you see that working?
Well, maybe not in our lifetime, but at some point, the water will come in. And we can either continue to fight it, or we can introduce hybrid systems that would allow water in so that it can be filtered properly. So right now, our retention basin just holds water, right? But when you spread water out, and I refer to the Hawaiians have been doing it, is they use Lo'i as their retention basins, right? So you have more, everything has like more than one purpose. You have retention, but you also have ag. And you have, and then you use that water, whatever you can collect for your buildings. So we should actually have a plethora of water, and we'll have a problem with what to do with that water with our buildings. Our buildings can use water for, like, as I mentioned, fire sprinklers, but we can also use it for thermal mass. So we can use it to keep buildings cool. We can use it as, if we collect it in large quantities, it has amazing, it's the reason why our cities near water have better climates, right? It's a mediator. So, so if we actually include that within the mass of a building, it would help with cooling costs. It would actually reduce energy. So there's all of these spiraling benefits of each other, but we just have to be able to use it creatively. And the beginning of it, though, is just allowing these things to be, to create the conditions, the policy conditions, to allow this kind of innovation to occur. Because it actually happens, right? Like, they do it on a very small scale in places like Puna, or where they have their own small infrastructure systems, but even those can be localized and smaller. There's going to be a point where, for example, sewage systems will be an appliance. So I'm involved with some National Science Foundation development with some folks that are creating very hyper localized sewage treatment. So it's not just for cesspools, it's for space stations as well as buildings and science stations like our Antarctic station and so forth. So yeah, so it's just a matter of allowing policy to do that.
Thank you, Chair.
Members, any other comments or questions?
I have a comment.
Member Leong.
Hi, Hale, thank you very much for that presentation. It's really encouraging. Excuse me, I'm on too many boards. What I wanted to ask you, and you've already addressed it with your comments to Mary Alice Evans, is the individual sewage treatment, so that we have a problem with cesspools, and that would be a real step forward. But I also wanted to point, we had the Singapore economists come and talk with us, and Singapore has taken its bay and created a freshwater reserve there. And all of their wastewater goes into this bay, and it is now their source for fresh water for the entire city of Singapore, which is amazing. So I can see where you're going with the development at Kakako. Boy, that's going to take a long time, but it's really encouraging. And thank you.
Yeah, I feel like there's a way out, and creating a brackish or even freshwater bays. Like there's I was in a studio with the landscape folks at UH, and they're looking at a problem in Waikiki. But if you understand the history of our coastlines, we actually had sand dunes, and we all know about the sand dunes. And inside of those sand dunes, the Hawaiians created freshwater fish ponds. And then they kind of spilled out, and there was a brackish water area, which were basically our wetlands that we filled in, right? But the wetlands created this massive filtration system of all of our water, protected our reefs. It was like, and we had oysters, right? They call them bivalve. And so there's research now that combines bivalves, seaweed, limu, right, and fish, and they create this ecosystem that helps clean the water really well. So that's why there's folks in our community who create limu leis, and they're trying to reseed parts of our wetland system to try to help to rejuvenate our coastlines. And you can tell, right, when you go to the beach, you don't smell the limu like you used to. Like you'd go to have a beach and you could smell the ogo or something, but now you go out there, you can't smell that because the reef's dead, we've lost the seaweed. So we're starting to lose more and more, and we can't really put your finger on it, but it's because it's just this slow turning up the temperature, and we're all basically frogs in boiling water. We don't even know it.
Thanks, Joe.
So is that time?
Great. Members, any other comments or questions? Being none, thank you, Hale. I appreciate the presentation. And we will move now to the next agenda item, an informational presentation by HCDA staff on the HCDA Communications and Marketing Plan, which is included as a goal in the Strategic Plan revised June 5th, 2024. Ms. Francine Murray, Communications Officer, will now present the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Betsy, why don't you step up?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, I got slides.
Okay. Thanks, Hill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Francine Murray from the HCDA Communications Department. It's an exciting time that we have this priority now to start telling our story and not be monopolized by the one story of Kaka'ako that's been told by so much of the media. We do so much more than just Kaka'ako. And as we've evolved, we're excited to hear that this is a priority from the board and from our executive director. We've already had tools in place. We have social media, the website, we do press releases, but now that it's a priority, we're upping our game. We're finding more of the HCDA stories to tell, and we'll be sharing more of that in the community and with this plan here. The goal comes from the strategic plan. And it's pretty straightforward. We'll be highlighting HCDA's community benefits as we do our projects. Our objectives help us to implement the plan. We have the tools in place. We already have a great HCDA logo that we'll continue to use. The leaves from the coconut tree represent the Aina and the land. The waves in the ocean represent the sea, so Maka to Makai. The logo still is very relevant, even though it was established in 1991, when the board created it. So what we will be doing that's new, besides increasing the number of press releases and media events, we have a new section on the website called the newsroom, where we'll have all of our press releases, our newsletters, and media coverage. So that should be implemented on the HCDA website by the end of the month. So this is our basic plan. We'll just be upping our game and getting the word out about what HCDA is doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Francine. Chair, if I may add to that.
Please.
So, members, the suggestion to, publicize and sort of market what HCDA does, especially as it relates to community benefits and community kind of resources, was something that member Sakota had suggested, as we were going through the last review of the, strategic plan. And I thought it was a good one. So even, as soon as you mentioned that, Francine has been publicizing things a little bit more, and I've been getting feedback in the community that they see our name in, in media a little bit more. And what this does, this plan just formalizes that sort of marketing plan and approach for HCDA. And it's subject to change and review from time to time, but I think this is a jumping off point for that. Thank you, Chair.
Awesome, thank you. I want to commend the staff for their efforts to tell the story. I think there's been great results so far. Open it up to members for comments and questions. Okay, Glenn, Member Yamasaki.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to commend Craig for this marketing and communications plan. I think it's going to be very important here on Maui as we embark on the Palehunui plan. So I really appreciate this work that you've done, and I think it will really bring HCDA to the foresight here on the island of Maui. Good job.
Thank you, Member Yamasaki. A lot of it is Francine's work, but it's really a team effort to implement a lot of these things, the press releases, events. So, but thank you for that, Member Yamasaki.
You're gonna make me a T-shirt, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Members, any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move to public testimony. No one signed up?
No testimony.
Okay. We'll move now to the next agenda item, number 4, informational presentation by HCDA staff on HCDA's proposed legislation that replaces the current transit-oriented development infrastructure improvement district and board structure in Chapter 206E, Part 10, Hawaii Revised Statutes with a program, and 2, updates Section 206E-1 Hawaii Revised Statutes findings and purposes to reflect the current responsibilities of the agency. Mr. Craig Nakamoto, Executive Director, will now discuss the proposed legislation.
Thank you, Chair. Francine is pulling up the proposed legislation. So I'm just gonna go through this pretty quickly. As I mentioned in a past meeting, we're trying to accomplish those two things in one legislation. It's not often that our agency's findings and purposes need to be revised, but in the case of HCDA, we find that there's a lot of additional responsibilities and tasks that our HCDA is being asked to do. including helping other state agencies with their work. So we found it necessary to make those revisions to the findings and purposes. And then also to revise the 206E part 10, which is the TOD Infrastructure Improvement District Program. We were finding that that existing structure was kind of inefficient and kind of unwieldy, and that the community input that is received through the OPSD planning process, through the TOD Interagency Council, I think is sufficient to provide this agency with community input for those TOD projects. So those are the two things we're seeking to do with this proposed legislation, and it's still being finalized by reviewed by deputy attorney generals, and then hopefully it's in the governor's administrative package. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director. Members, any comments or questions? Member Evans? Oh, sorry, Member Evans, you muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I support this legislation. I think it streamlines the work that HCDA does supporting the TOD Council's approach, and it also allows for some flexibility in utilizing the HCDA's really amazing teamwork in their staff on projects that otherwise wouldn't get done. So I want to thank Craig and the team for putting this together.
Thank you, Member Evans.
Member Evans, appreciate it.
Members, any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to public testimony. Is there anyone signed up to testify?
No, none, Chair.
Okay, we'll move now to item number 5, informational presentation by HCDA staff on the agency's proposed operating and capital improvement project budget requests for the 2025 legislative session. Mr. Garrett Sasaki, Chief Financial Officer, will now discuss the budget requests.
Thank you, Chair, members. In the interest of time also, I'll go through this relatively quickly. On the operating budgets for normal payroll and admin expenses, same as last year, plus collective bargaining increases. There is one request for a new permanent position. That's for the 99-year leasehold program, and is to convert that temporary position that would have or will lapse June 30, 2025 into a permanent position. After that, we have a CIP budget request. The top three are, well, this list is grouped by district. So the first set is TOD. These are all continuations of prior projects. The first one's $2 million to supplement the current electrical improvements. Number 3 is $60 million for infrastructure to support development at Merritt Housing and the League Civic Center. Number 4 is $50 million to continue building the road and infrastructure at UH West Oahu. Number 5 is $33 million for electrical improvements in Kailua. That number came up as the equal amount the Navy has contributed to divest itself from the system. Number 6, $1 million EIS for Kailua. That's to allow us to continue with the infrastructure and development. Number 7, $14 million for land acquisition in Kailua. That's to acquire parcel 10. I think Craig, Executive Director Nakamoto previously talked about this parcel. Number 8, it's for the second year of the biennium, it's $20 million for drainage improvements in Kalaeloa. More details will come out of the infrastructure master plan. We expect to see a draft mid next year. Number 9, $1.5 million is for Kalaeloa and Kaka'ako, is the climate change planning. Number 10, $80 million. This is in Kaka'ako for infrastructure improvements. Primarily Ilani Y Street, so that's following up from the 2 million we had in plan and design. Number 11, $100 million for wharf and bulkhead repairs, Kewalo Basin Harbor. Number 12, $1 million. Community planning, Kaka'ako Makai. Number 13, it's split into 2 years. This is the construction portion of the 99 leasehold program. It represents the gap to keep the units affordable and developer equity. This is the state contribution to that project. Number 14, $24 million to build a mobility hub in Lot C, Kaka'ako. Number 15 is $2 million for permit modernization. And it's a system to digitize, modernize the permit files for planning department. Number 16, $60 million for infrastructure improvements at Palihunui. And further details will come out of the infrastructure master plan that we expect to see next late summer. That's the list. I know I went through it really quickly, but available for questions.
Thank you, Garrett. Members, any comments or questions for the staff?
So the current status is, this is the list we submitted to our DBED. It has many steps to go through till it ends up in the final budget, and it has to survive through the next legislative session also. But this is the initial list.
Member Evans?
Yes, I'd like to note that a lot of this infrastructure will help to unlock housing along in the transit-oriented development zones. These are large numbers, but if the developers or landowners, and many of them are state lands, would have to pay these infrastructure upfront costs, the housing projects wouldn't happen. So I think that this approach is going to result in more houses sooner and at lower price points, whether they're 99-year leasehold or rental on state and public lands or private lands. This is I think a major shift in policy. We've seen over the decades that both county and state have shifted costs to private developers, and that has driven up the cost of housing, especially for first-time home buyers, and that it has resulted in fewer homes being produced. So I strongly support this approach. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Evans. Members, any other comments or questions?
Sure, I have a question.
Please.
So I
Vice Chair.
noticed, thank you. I noticed you're converting one position that was already fulfilled into a permanent position as a request, but I did not see any additional requests for any additional positions due to all of the different projects that we have going on. So do you feel that the current staffing will be sufficient?
We have to see what projects come out of this budget to determine what staffing resources we need. A lot of these projects are relatively longer term, so we have a chance in the next cycle to request positions if it's needed.
Yeah, I just noticed because we have all these additional projects, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're not sure which ones are gonna be approved legislatively wise.
Yeah.
But I just don't see anything that's tied into from a personnel wise.
So, this, extending to permanent status for this position is, one of the positions that we got in Act 97. The position is filled right now, but we're trying to extend it because the projects are gonna take longer than June 30th, 2025. We have, two other positions, Vice Chair, that we received from the legislature a session or so ago. And we're looking to determine how and what kind of staffing we need for those positions to best accommodate the future workload. So there is two additional positions.
My second question was, Chair, if it's okay. Was more on, I didn't see anything in regards to any support going forward on the stadium authority. And that particular development from an infrastructure perspective.
Mhm.
So is it something that we are not being requested upon now going forward? Or has that been silent?
So it's my understanding, Vice Chair, that all the infrastructure needs of the stadium and the surrounding areas are being addressed under the current procurement that's in process right now. We haven't been asked to fund any of those. We have not.
So but from a funding perspective, it's gonna be, so we have not been requested, but we may still be asked to support.
So to the second question, I don't know if we still may be asked to support the stadium initiative. We've been a resource to the stadium development so far. Whether or not we continue to do that is unclear right now. One of the things that I actually wanna try to do is we have that stadium development district right now. Right, in our 206E statutes.
Correct.
It doesn't have a board. All of the development rights were given to transferred to the stadium authority. So I'm actually seeing if that's something that district we can remove from our statute just for ease of administration.
Yeah, governance wise, I think we should, if it's not gonna be tapped upon.
Yeah, and that's the discussions that I'm gonna have with stadium authority in the next week or so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move now to public testimony. Do we have anyone signed up to testify?
No, Chair.
Nope. So we'll move now to agenda item number 5, report of the executive director, the monthly report and other status reports for September 2024. Executive Director Nakamoto will now provide the monthly report with Garrett Sasaki accompanying.
Thank you, Chair. The report is in tab 7 of your packet. And Garrett is here to answer any questions on the financials if you have any.
Members, any comments or questions? Seeing none, do we have any public testimony on this item?
None, Chair.
No public testimony. In that case, I'll move to adjourn this meeting of the HCDA at-large authority. The time is now 10:04 a.m. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Should we take a 5-minute break and resume at 10:10?